but
yeah.
I'm sure I can catch it all today.
Absolutely.
How do you
Where are you
pronounce your last name?
located?
I'm in Houston, Texas. What's going on, Charles? How you doing, man? Good morning.
Doing good, man. How are you?
I'm blessed. Yes, sir.
How do you pronounce the last name? Is Tajani?
Tajani, yes, sir.
Okay.
Tajani. A lot of people think the J is silent, so they say Tahani. but it's definitely Tajani.
Cool. Let's see. It's episode 152, Rashana.
I know.
Wow.
Don't forget to introduce me this time.
Well, all right. I was gonna say okay. So let's kick it off. Let's get right into it, and I'm sure it'll be a good show. So this is the Todd Capital Millionaire podcast, episode 152. My name is Charles Oglesby, also known as Todd Millionaire, founder and director of the Todd Capital Investment Club, also the Todd Capital Options community that has over 3,000 members. So doing some really cool stuff here with my co-host, Rashana Scott. Now Flipping Hills. How you doing, Miss Rashana?
I'm good. How are you?
Doing well. But to all the guests, or to all the listeners, thank you for tuning in. The purpose of this podcast is to share the stories of successful African-American business owners and investors, so that people can hear the stories of successful examples. They exist despite what they want you to believe. We want people to learn that business and investing are the true keys to financial success and generational wealth. With us today, we have TJ Tajani from Houston, Texas. He is a Airbnb super host, real estate investor, and he's going to provide some great insight today. So welcome to the show, man.
Man, thank you so much for having me. This is a true blessing. Thank you so much. Thanks for allowing me to come on here and speak to your audience. It's a true pleasure.
Yeah, we're gonna jump right in. We usually like to start off with just asking. So tell us about growing up, your background, where you're from, kind of what that looked like, and then also, is there any? Oh, I just realized you're a swagger. That's nice, rentalpreneur. I like that.
Appreciate it.
But do you come from like a family of entrepreneurs, and what all that looks like?
Oh, absolutely. So actually, I don't. I really don't come from family entrepreneurs. I'm originally from Nigeria. Originally born in Nigeria. I came here to Houston when I was 8 years old. So I grew up here in Houston. Went to University of Houston. Graduated from University of Houston. I'm the first in my family to go to college. I watched my mother, who's amazing, work really hard to raise myself and my 4 other siblings. So I went to University of Houston. I ended up having a great opportunity, and I worked really hard to put myself through school so that way I can graduate with no student loans. And I graduated with a mechanical engineering degree, so my background's in engineering. And when I graduated, I worked in oil and gas for some time. Did that from 2012 until 2017. Being in the oil and gas market, it's what a lot of engineers do here in Houston. I had a great job. I didn't hate it. I traveled quite a bit. The job forced me to be working offshore as a subsea installations engineer about 65% of the year. So I was hardly home. I was always out in the water somewhere working. And so, but while I was doing that, I bought my first piece of real estate in 2015. So that's how I got into the real estate space. I started off doing buying and holding, did that for some time. And then what happened as far as like the oil and gas market is kind of finicky in a way. And when the prices for a barrel went from $100 to $42, my project pretty much ended, and the people out the portfolio I was on, which was the ExxonMobil portfolio, they stopped drilling. So they said, we just don't have enough engineers to support the amount of projects that we have. And they tried to move me around, and I ended up being left with a decision to either take a different role that would have required me to get half of my salary or take a severance. So I decided to put a bet on myself. And at the time I had 5 rental properties at the time. And so I decided to bet on myself and do this real estate thing full time. And it's been a heck of a journey. And even the short-term rental space as a whole, I wasn't even particularly looking for it. I was doing fix and flips. I was doing wholesaling, buying and holding. I was really doing market research to really turn things up and really take things to the next level. In my research, I came across the short-term rental space. And at the time, I had 2 houses that I was doing a remodel on. One I was going to do a flip on, and the other one I was going to keep as a rental property. And so what ended up happening was I decided to try this short-term rental space and the one I was going to keep as a rental. And it ended up working out very well. And so then the next month I got another short-term rental and just been growing it ever since.
Nice.
Yeah.
So I like when you said like bet on yourself, right? Because that's something that we talk about often here. So what made you go, like, why real estate, right? What was the first interest like?
The first interest, my first interest kind of started the way a lot of people's real estate interests are. I read a book on assets, on owning assets, which is Rich Dad, Poor Dad. I read that book about a year after I graduated from college, and I decided that, I need to own some assets. I want to own some assets. And at the time, I felt like I just had this entrepreneurship spirit in me. I was just trying to figure out which exact route I wanted to go in this entrepreneurship game. And I really wanted to leverage what I was doing, as an engineer. I didn't want that to just be the only thing. Honestly, being an engineer, as much as I liked it, it wasn't the end all be all for me. So I was looking at something to get into. When I read that portal, I said, I want to own some properties. That's what I want to do. And that's how I decided to do real estate.
So nice. I think one of the things that some people might miss, because they're always so focused on the assets, is it helped that you had a high earning career.
Absolutely.
And so can you talk about how you're able to funnel your resources into financing these deals? Because, your first property, can you talk about how you finance that and just talk about that whole process?
Absolutely. So it's funny, I tell people all the time, I'll never be one of those guys who's like, forget a 9-to-5, don't full-time entrepreneurship, forget that. Listen, use your 9-to-5 and use that day job to leverage the other things that you want to do. And especially on the real estate side, it's so much easier. It's so much easier to assume assets, especially if you have a W-2 income, if you have that 9-to-5 job, because they view you as stable. And so while you're making money, it's okay to work for that company, but build something for yourself. I remember I would go to work and I would come home by 5, 6 o'clock. I would eat my dinner, and then I would be in my home office calling sellers, marketing, and getting on the phone calls. I remember the girlfriend I had at the time. She was like, "Man, like, why are you, like, you're already working? Why are you spending so much more time? You're still working." I was like, "Well, that's perfectly fine that I'm working. I'm okay. Listen, I'm on these $1 million projects, making this company a lot of money every single day running these projects. I said, I have to invest something in myself. So I'm going to leverage my time and my income while I'm doing that to build something for myself." And that's really what people should do in the sense of, while they're working, to be able to build something for yourself, especially if you want to do real estate. Man, it's such a big benefit. And really set some realistic goals as to where you want to be before you decide to walk out of that situation, so you can make yourself position yourself to do a lot better than a lot of folks who don't have that 9-to-5 backing, man. So definitely.
Yeah, I think that's good because it's like, I don't know where it got cool to criticize people who were working a 9-to-5.
I don't know.
Right? But you are absolutely right. Like, I work with clients all the time who wish they had a stable income because they're trying to buy real estate and they can't. Or, they have a stable income and then they're leveraging the different ways on how we can, use an FHA or use a conventional or, like just all the different loan types that you can leverage. Like you said, when you do have that quote unquote financial security. But the other thing that I loved about your story, like you said, just going back to when you say you had a decision to make, right? You could take a severe pay cut, or like you said, take that money and just bet on yourself. And the good thing about that is that you already built up a rental portfolio, 5 properties, and you already had something working for you. And I want people to realize, like, when you do take that leap of faith, or you are presented with a decision, or you get let go, whether it's your choice or not, the key is already having something in the works.
Absolutely.
Right. And so many people want to jump out the window and say, I'll build my plane on the way down, I'll figure it out. But it's so much easier to figure it out when you've already got something working for you.
You end up running back to another job if you don't have anything built. And that's why I like what he was saying, where you work your job and then you build something for yourself. And so I feel like people think we're criticizing 9-to-5s, and that's not the case. We're just saying, don't let the 9-to-5 be everything that you have. Don't bet on that 9-to-5 to save you. Don't bet on that 9-to-5 to give you that pay raise. And
Absolutely.
so if you take that approach, then you have a more advantageous situation where they say, we're not doing it to quit the job. We're saying, just in case that job quits you, you want to make sure that you have something to fall back on.
Absolutely. 100%. I always tell people that, you know, it's okay, like that 9-to-5, it's perfectly fine. But if that is the only thing you're doing, then that's actually, to me, that's a risk. If that's the only thing you're doing. So leverage that to build something, and man, things will be a lot easier.
Absolutely, absolutely. So tell us, what does that first deal look like for you? That first rental property?
Man, so when it comes to rental properties, right? I always try to tell people there's a money versus time exchange. Now, I'll give you an example. That my very first rental property was a house out here in Missouri City, Houston. It's a suburb part of Houston, and it didn't need any work. This property, I bought it for $90,000. Didn't need any work. It was, new floors, new roof, new HVAC system. Everything was perfect. I went ahead and bought that property with a conventional loan. I put down 20%. So I came to the closing, I think about $22,000. Came to the closing. My mortgage was $840 a month. I had that thing rented out within 2 weeks for $1,240 a month. So that delta, that difference, that was my cash flow, right? That was the way I bought my first property. See, I bought that property with my money, right? It required a down payment versus the way I really buy my properties now, which is more so with my time. I buy them with my time, and I buy these properties distressed, and I buy them to where they need work. And so now I leverage a private lender to buy this property. Have to, go through the appraisal process, leverage a private lender, go with your rehab scope of work, get your contractor involved, get the bid, send it over to the private lender, get the appraisal done, and then you close on this property. But I'm able to do this with little to no money out of pocket because the private lender gives me 70 to 75% loan to value. So it's essentially the BRRRR method, which is the way I buy most of my properties now, where I leverage a private lender where he's able to fund 70 or 75% loan to value, which I'm able to use that money to buy the asset and fund the rehab as well. And then I go into the refinancing that property with a conventional loan. And now that property is done being rehabbed and it's nice, now I can qualify for a conventional loan. Then I come up with a conventional loan or a bank and I refinance that property. And because I'm able to leverage that 70 to 75% loan to value, meaning 70 to 75% of whatever the after repair value is. When I buy that property, what is the value of that property going to be once it's fixed up? And that's what the lender bases their numbers off of. So I'm able to leverage their money to buy the property, do the rehab, and then refinance it. And I'm still able to capture about 20 to 30% equity, instant equity capture, and still able to cash flow that property. But that process takes time. So I bought that asset with not so much money out of pocket, maybe covering closing costs. But it took a lot of time to get there versus that first example. It didn't take much time at all, but it did take a lot more capital up front to get there. So now I buy my real estate with my time more so. And so that's, yeah.
When you say time, you mean phone calls, you mean marketing, you mean hitting the pavement. Yep. That's what you're talking about.
Hitting the pavement. Time means phone calls, it means marketing, it means getting that lead, right? Then it means it's time to get the property, between the time when you buy the property or get that lead to get the property and to the point to where that property is cash flowing, to the point that property is actually making money. That took a lot of time. Getting that lead is one thing, and then also rehabbing the property. That's a few months, depending on how bad the rehab is. And then you refinance it. That's another month process right there. And then the property starting to cash flow. So that takes time, but minimum, lot less money out of pocket, but it does take time versus that first example. I had that property cash flow within 2 weeks when I bought it. And so, but that took a lot of more money, but it probably didn't need any work. So I more so buy real estate with my time these days versus my money.
So I would argue that you bought the first property kind of with your time as well, because you probably had to save up the 20 grand. And that probably came from you working on the job, which means you were trading time for money. And the only reason I bring it up is because it means anybody can kind of hop into this. The idea that you don't have stacks on stacks on stacks shouldn't prevent you from getting out there and finding a deal.
Absolutely.
I tell people, like, having stacks is dope, but deal flow is hard, man. Like, I can't even find a good deal to save my life these days. So it's like you have all this money sitting here, and it's like, I guess I just got to look at the cash because I can't find a deal that makes sense.
Right.
I was actually about to ask, since you speak about the Burr method, like, do you feel as though those deals are still easy to find these days?
I think it really depends. A lot of it depends on your market. Here in Houston, it is quite competitive. But what I found is that when I decided to really niche down in particular, so my strategy was more broad before. I would give a bunch of zip codes, like, you know what, I'm open to these zip codes. But now I've kind of niched down into specific areas. And what I found that is that by me doing that, is that I'm able to get my name out there in that particular market, that particular neighborhood. Is that, look, I am the ideal person. I'm buying a lot of real estate in this area. Like, for example, here in Houston, Third Ward, the last closing I did, one of the agents, she brought me a gift that said Mr. Third Ward on it, because I own properties here in Third Ward, but a lot of people know that this is where I buy at. A lot of people know that. So even when I network with people, a lot of deals don't get past me, especially if it's a small multifamily. It doesn't get past me. Because I decided to kind of niche down and kind of be the man in that per se in that particular area. So I think that was something that definitely helped out. I think definitely is getting a little bit harder to find good deals. People are coming up with different ways, different marketing strategies to figure out which marketing strategy is working the most. But for me, one of the main things, I don't spend too much time on marketing, not like I used to be honest, but I network with a lot of agents, and I work with a lot of real listing agents, and I network with them all the time. I'm touching them all the time to let them know that, hey, I am still interested in this area. Let me know what you got. Give me a chance to get this property before it goes on the MLS. Give me a shot at it first. And I network with a lot of agents, and I get deals to my email all the time because of that, because I'm consistent with that process.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I like that a lot. So let's talk about short-term rentals.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
Let's talk about that and what that business looks like, and we'll talk about pre-COVID, pre-pandemic, before we touch on the current of it. So how long have you been doing that? And I know you said you weren't looking for it. So what did that first kind of setup or deal look like?
Absolutely. My first short-term rental went live in December 2017, but I like to kind of just say this January 2018. So it's been a little over about 2.5 years now being in the space. Being in that particular strategy. Of course, I've been investing in real estate since 2015, but mainly being in the short-term rental space since 2000. So a little bit over 2.5 years now. And it's been great. It's been awesome. That pre-COVID, things were different. Things were flowing very, very well. I remember there was a day I was standing in front of my duplex outside. I was talking to one of my cleaning crews, and I got a text message, and they said that, man, this past March. They said the text message said, TJ, they just canceled the rodeo. For y'all who don't know, the Houston rodeo is like the biggest festival. And it's a month-long deal, and people travel from all over the place. March is a really, really big month to kick off the high season in terms of short-term rentals here in Houston, this Houston market. So I got a text. They said, man, they canceled the rodeo. And I was like, wow, well, I kind of saw that coming. And not even 30 minutes later, my phone just started flooding and buzzing. All these cancellations, cancel, all these cancels. So I think between the next 2 days after that, I lost about 80% of our reservation, but that was supposed to come in between March and April. Lost about 80% of the reservations that was supposed to come in. So it was a lot. It was a big undertaking at first. It was like, wow, okay, this is new. How do we go about this? And so then, we kind of went back and we sat back and I convened with my mentors. It's okay. So how are we, here's the thing, as an entrepreneur, if you're the kind of person that kind of sits back and lets things happen to you, that you might really want to rethink this entrepreneurship thing, because at the end of the day, we're problem solvers. And we're problem solvers not only for our clients and the people that we serve, we're problem solvers within our own businesses as well. As things come up, we got to be able to pivot. We got to be able to adjust and realize what's working to compensate for that certain situation. So we just kind of went back and we said, okay, what works? What'll work right now? And so we said, okay, who exactly it is that we serve and where our location, the locations of all of our short-term rentals, these locations are ideal. We're within 10 minutes to the hospital. We are within 10 minutes to the downtown Houston area, within 10 minutes to the midtown, still really close to all the business sectors that are here in Houston. So we just pivoted our marketing. Now we still use the OTAs, which is the online travel agencies like Airbnb, Booking.com, VRBO, whatnot. But we really ramped up our own marketing, our own direct booking site, got a boost in terms of just the way we started marketing it, because we have a direct booking site as well. So we started calling a lot of hospitals, calling, certain businesses to say that, hey, we know there's a lot going on right now, but when you have your travel nurses come by or you have your doctors come in, we have beautiful places that can accommodate you guys. And so these hospitals started booking our listings, and so that started working very well. And then another thing that we did, we started to change up our pricing strategy as well, offering a lot bigger discounts and offering bigger incentives to people who still want to book with us. And so something happened. There was a shift that took place during these COVID times in the short-term rental space. Even the founder of Airbnb put a statement out there and said, right now what they're seeing is 50% of bookings that are coming in during these COVID times were month-long stays or more. Right. So we started getting a lot of those stays. And so we started offering big discounts for people who wanted to stay for a longer term, 30 days or more. We started offering these big discounts. Matter of fact, we had on our list, and we put it out there. We said, if you book at least 60 days, you get a free flat screen 50-inch TV. You know what I mean? So we provided those kind of incentives, and we were able to literally recoup all that 80% that we lost. We were able to recoup, if not almost all of it, by at least 90% of those reservations. We were able to get those dates backfilled because of the adjustments that we made, because of the pivots that we made to our pricing and our marketing strategy. So it's been working out very, very well. Were we as profitable as we would have been if things were okay? Not necessarily. We weren't as profitable, but still profitable nonetheless, considering the times. Even right now, as I'm talking to you, I'm 92% occupied across my listings, and it's going pretty well. And even with this, it's, things aren't shut down, but this with things ramping back up, we're still getting a lot of bookings. And the things we're seeing right now is we're getting people that are traveling locally, just maybe they're in a neighboring state or neighboring they're traveling in and they're coming in because they just want to do they don't feel comfortable flying. They want to go ahead and travel to do get a more local experience, and they drive and they come stay in my units, and they have, they stay for a week or a few weeks at a time or a weekend, and we're getting a lot of those reservations. Plus, we're still getting a lot of our medical folks that are staying with us as well, because we're situated very, very nicely. So it's been working out pretty well. I think, what people need to understand is just being able to make adjustments in times, especially as an entrepreneur, as a business owner, being able to adjust to meet the demand of what's going on at the time is very, very important. That's exactly what we did. And it worked out very well for us.
That's good. What were, the art of the pivot? Like that's, I'm sure that could be a whole series or a whole episode on just that. So initially, like even in the beginning or pre-COVID, what were some of the biggest lessons that you learned in the short-term rental space when even just getting started?
Absolutely. I think one of the biggest adjustments that I had to make is learning how to screen my guests properly. That was one of the biggest things, because at the end of the day, you're sustainable, because this business is a long-term play. Like, this is a business we're building to sustain. This is not a business that we're just getting in and getting out at some point in time. I'm building a brand here. I'm building a legit business here. And we want to make sure that the process for the better guests you can get into your unit consistently, the better your business will be. So we had to kind of make an adjustment and fine tuning that process of how we screen our guests. And there are a lot of things that we look at now. I remember there was a time back in May, this was May 2018. And it was one of my one-bedroom listings that I had. And I was 98% occupied that month, right? With that listing. I wanted to be 100% occupied. And so I had somebody that wanted to book those last 2 days. And I was like, oh, great. I got this whole calendar full 100%. And they came in, brand new profile. They were local. Didn't even have a profile picture. And I was so blinded by, I just want to get this calendar full, that I did not screen this guest properly. And what I learned from that experience is that not all money is good money at all. So he came in, and man, the security at that complex had to call me like, yo, TJ, at like 1:30 in the morning. It was like, man, something's going on at your unit, man. So I had to drive over there, and they were having, I don't know what I call a party. It was on another level of an event. It was a big party that it was like one bedroom apartment with like 45 people there, people all in the hallways, other residents were coming out like, what is going on here? And it was one of the biggest mistakes I made.
They was having a Fifi.
What is it?
I don't know.
You never heard that song, Fifi on the Block?
Oh no,
It's
I
like a
just
big
thought it was a
party.
big party. Big
Okay.
party, yeah. That's kind of, I kind of
But
figured that's
it's
what it
like a huge party. It's
Yeah.
usually outside, but it sounded like they had a fifi inside.
was.
It's interesting
Yeah,
because the two things you mentioned are two things that the girl who just did that interview on Earn Your Leisure said that she doesn't do. Like, she won't book a local guest.
yeah,
And also, like, if it's a new profile, there's no reviews,
yep,
there's no track record there. So you
yep.
usually get them blindsided.
Yep, absolutely. And I mentioned that because those are the things that we make sure that we look out for now. But you know, being still new in the business, being naive, just looking at the money more so. I completely ignored those things. So yeah, those are very, very important, and they're just a part of the ways you're supposed to be screening these guests. We don't take local guests. We don't take local guests. You have to have a really, really, really good reason to book with us if you're local. We are. You have to have a really, really good reason. We try not to ostracize everybody, but yeah, most of the local guests that want to book with us, we don't accept them unless we hear you out and see why you want to book, and then if it makes sense, especially if you have previous reviews that are good, that make sense. And we look at reviews not only if you have reviews that you stayed out of town, have you stayed local before and you had a good review, then we consider you. But outside of that, we hardly consider local guests.
So what type of local guests like would you accept? Like,
yeah. So for one thing, understand, especially here in Houston, the city's big. It's a big city. And my listings Houston is like comprised of different loops, right? So inside the 610 loop is where, the medical center is, the downtown area is, the midtown area is where people really like to travel to. And so this is where our units are situated. And so, but a lot of times people that live out in the burbs, 45 minutes away, 30 minutes away, they want to stay in the city for that week or for that weekend because they just want to be close by, because they have either they have something to do in that city, they're celebrating somebody in that city, but they're coming in with good intentions and they're not coming in to throw a party. They just want to be close to the Midtown area, or maybe they're coming in and they have a relative or a friend that's getting a procedure done in the hospital. They want to stay close to the hospital for that week or for that time period. We get a lot of those folks as well, and that's perfectly fine. But outside of those kind of reasons, then we really don't consider local guests. But those
what
are
about
really
small events?
No, we don't allow events of any kind in our units. Events of any kind. Okay. I don't care if it's a get together, a baby shower. We don't allow events of any kind in our units.
If they do something like that, can you go after them after the fact to say, oh, well, you owe us this much in damages? Kind of like if you rented just an apartment.
Absolutely. Yes, you can. And, there are ways that you can actually, and depending on what platform you're doing, the reservation came in at, it's a different process in terms of, handling damages that guests might have caused. But yeah, you can definitely go after them for that. Especially if they smoke, even if they smoke in your unit, you can definitely go after. For you, if you smoke in my unit, that's $250 off top. That's $250 just to get the smoke out and all that. And we build them for that. You know what I mean? And there's a way that you kind of go about that. But yeah, if you definitely if you cause damage, then yeah, we definitely go about it. And I'm glad you mentioned that too, because there was a time, my mentor, I was doing a Zoom call with my mentor one time in our group, and he was talking about how we're letting a lot of stuff slide, like a lot of guests that would mess up your sheets, a lot of guests mess up your towels. So my mentality before was like, oh, it's just sheets and towels, I'll just order new ones, it's fine. And so I was letting a lot of that stuff slide. But now, when my mentor told me, he said, look, add up, when you really look at it for a month and really add up the cost of the linens that you lose. And when I added it up, it was like literally thousands. I was like, wow, across with all the listings that I have, I need to get more granular, and I need to be more serious about making sure that I'm charging guests when they mess up my sheets and my towels, because I'm missing out on a lot of money and I'm losing a lot of money by not doing that. So yeah, we definitely got that process down packed now.
You got to run a business like a business. We had a tenant move in, and she was there for like 2 weeks, decided she didn't want to stay there anymore, but she thinks she's getting all her money back. Oh, if we have to clean up after you, we're going to charge you to clean up after you. We're not just going to just count it as a loss. Like, we're not taking that L for you.
Exactly.
So short-term rentals are like kind of notorious, or they're well known that they cash flow much greater than just a standard long-term rental. So with that excess, are you accelerating the debt pay down, or are you looking to scale your business, or are you just driving a Rolls Royce?
For me, I'm looking to scale the business. For me, I'm scaling the business. You know, it is true that, you know, if you're running your short-term rental right, you should be able to cash flow, I would say on average about 3 times the amount as you would as a traditional rental property. And so yes, that excess cash flow does is great, but I use it to grow the business. And one thing that I like to caution people on to do is I don't buy property, because I'm both what you consider a landlord host and a rental arbitrage host. I own my short-term rental properties, but I also have corporate leases. I rent some of my short-term rentals as well. And right now it's about 60% ownership and 40% rentals. Well, that'll be even down to 50-50 by the time the year's over. Now, I tell people, especially when you own your short-term rentals, you want to make sure that you buy it right. I don't care what real estate strategy that you do, whether you're doing flips, whether you're doing buying and hold, whether you're wholesaling. You make your money when you buy the property, when you buy that asset. I don't buy properties and make them short-term rentals if they will not cash flow as a traditional rental property. If I can't put a regular tenant in that property and let it cash flow and I won't be upside down, then I'm not buying that property. Their numbers don't make sense for me, because for 2 reasons. For one thing, right now, a lot of refinance lenders and a lot of banks and mortgage companies aren't recognizing your short-term rental income as golden. You know, what they still look at is a lease agreement. They want to see your traditional, what it will rent for, right? So if it won't rent for, if you'll be upside down if you rent it out, then that deal won't work for me. So I buy it. And I need to be able to make sure that it cash flows as a traditional rental. Second reason is because you never know what could happen. You never know what could happen and why you may need to pivot to a traditional rental property. Even if it's a temporary pivot, you never know what could happen, especially if you have a short-term rental in a particular neighborhood and maybe some deed restrictions come into place that shut you down. You know, what are you going to do? You could sell the property, obviously, if you have enough equity to make money from it. But you could just put a traditional tenant in and let that cash flow as well and pivot and then move on to another area that'll work for you. So, you know, for that reason, when I buy my assets and I buy my properties, yes, it'll cash flow as an Airbnb, as a short-term rental. Yes, it will. But it needs to also cash flow as a traditional rental as well.
Nice. So what do you prefer, or what have you found more success with, or does it matter? Like, if as a short-term rental, like single family versus multi-units, or like condos or apartments, like what's your mix like, or what do you prefer? What have you seen more success with?
So I'm seeing more success with my properties that I own that are multifamily, my small multifamily properties, my duplexes and whatnot. These tend to cash flow the most. What I do with my duplexes is kind of a niche within the short-term rental niche itself, because Airbnb and short-term rentals is kind of a niche within the real estate industry. But I niche down even further by having 3 listings with my duplexes. So I have a listing for 1 unit, I have a listing for the second unit, and I have a listing if you want to rent both units at the same time. If you want to rent the entire building, you can do that as well. And so my numbers on my duplexes are far better than probably any other asset that I have. Now, for example, I have a duplex now. My very first duplex I bought, for example, I have a mortgage of about $1,900 a month, right? That's my mortgage. But my 2-bedroom unit that I rent, my rent is like $1,800 for that 2-bedroom unit, for that 1 2-bedroom unit, right? But for my duplex, that's a 2-bedroom, is $1,900 for the entire building. So the numbers work a lot better, and they're only about 8 minutes away from each other. So location is still great. And so my numbers are a lot better with the properties that I own, especially my duplexes. My big houses do very well too. Like I have what we call House Plus. If you have a house, properties that are at least 2,200 square feet, we consider them House Pluses. Now these properties, they sleep at least 10 people. When you have those kind of properties that are nice and they set up properly, we get a lot of large groups that are there. And so those properties do very well as well. So I shot a video of my very first Airbnb. It's about a 1,700 square feet, three bedroom, 2-bath house. And I broke down exactly how I bought it on my Instagram. And that property still does numbers to this day. It's a house that sleeps 10 people, and it does very, very well. So I will give my first to say my small multifamilies. Probably have the best margins with those. But I still love my rental arbitrage properties because they still cash flow very well as well. They still cash flow. But my rental arbitrage properties, this is what allows me to scale. This is what allows me to kind of take it to the next level, because that you can build those up a lot more quicker than buying the properties. Remember, buying it with your time, buying the properties, doing the rehab and all that. So that's why I still like my rental arbitrage properties. But the ones that I own, especially my small multifamilies, they definitely do better numbers.
So I have two questions. So how do you fit 10 people in a 3-bedroom house?
Great question. So 10 people, 3-bedroom house. So one room has 2 queen beds. I mean, these are big rooms. Now, these are very solid. It's not cramped up. It's very comfortable. We put nice big flat screen TVs in all of our rooms and the living rooms. It has two queen beds in one room. The master has a king bed, so that's 6, 2, 4, 6. The 3rd bedroom also has a queen bed, that's 8. And then the couch in the living room is a queen size pull-out sofa. So that's 10. So that sleeps 10. This house actually has a second den area. It actually has a second living room, but we put we don't have a sleeper in that one. It could have slept 12, but we just kept it at 10. My rule of thumb is that I don't put more than 6 guests to one restroom. Like if you have one restroom, I don't put more than 6 guests to one. So if you say you should have a 1-bedroom unit with 1 bathroom, it shouldn't sleep more than 6 at the max. That should be the most it sleeps. But those tend to sleep about 4 people with a bed and a master, then a pull-out sofa. Some people let it sleep 6 as well by providing like an air mattress or foldable beds or something like that. So, yeah, but in a big house, that's the unit. That's a sleep mix. What I like to call sleep mix. That's a sleep mix in the in the big house. Yes.
Oh. And then my second question is, can you break down exactly what rental arbitrage is for our guests who are listening who might not know? And then what are so I guess I have a third question. So what are some risks associated with rental arbitrage?
Absolutely. So rental arbitrage is what's also known as control without ownership. Some people also know it as master leasing. And what I like about it is that it's an opportunity for you to gain cash flow from these properties that you don't own, but you can still cash flow from them. And what I tell people is these rental arbitrage properties, you can get it from what we call owner-occupied landlords. These are landlords like myself who own real estate. You know, maybe you own a house, a multifamily property, or single-family property. You can rent from them, just do a lease, rent it from them. Or you can rent from a REIT, which is like an apartment complex. These are, your 200, 300, 400, unit apartment complexes that you can rent from. And so what I tell people is to make sure if you're going to do a rental arbitrage, you want to do it right. You want to make sure that you do it right. I do not teach my people or tell people to rent it under your personal name. Rent it under a business. Do a corporate lease. Don't rent it under your personal name for a couple of reasons. For one reason is that you are exposing yourself to liability issues. Understand that when somebody rents a property out to you and they vet you and they look at your social security and they look at your credit and whatnot, they are vetting you and approving you. So if you have, if somebody else stays there, understand that it's treated as like a business. If they have a slip and fall and they want to sue you, now your name is exposed to everything, right? So you want to make sure that you rent it under a business, under an entity, and that have that business on the lease agreement. That's what's called a corporate lease. So a lot of apartment complexes, they usually tend to have about 20% of their units just allocated to corporate leases. So when we talk to these apartment complexes, the first question we ask them is, hey, do you guys have any corporate leases available? We're looking to rent a few units. Are you the right person to talk to? So second reason is that by definition, if you rent it under your name, by definition, you are subleasing, right? And subleasing is not allowed in a lot of places. A lot of places do not allow subleasing because, again, they qualified you. They did not qualify. You subleasing to somebody else. They did not qualify that person. So you don't want to, by definition, you don't want to sublease. You want to do it under a business because it's understood that as a business, that business can't stay at that property. Somebody will be staying on behalf of the business. And they understand that you are, as a business, you want your business to succeed. So they are trusting you to confirm that vetting process to make sure you get the right people to stay in there. So you want to make sure that you do it the right way. You want to make sure that you rent it under a business. And if you do it under a business, it's a really good chance that you'll be able to get more than one listing. Like we locked in 5 units in a Midtown apartment complex about a month ago. We already got one of them going. We're going to be rolling out the rest of them because we do it under business, right? And that's how you want to do it. And I don't encourage people to do it under your personal name. I got a call September of 2019. And it was from a guy that I know, and he hit me up and he said, man, he Instagrammed me. He said, man, TJ, please call me. So I called him. He said, man, I'm in some trouble. I rented out this apartment complex in downtown, and they found my listing on Airbnb, and now they want to take me to court, and now they want me to pay up my entire lease term up front. You know what I mean? So that's what you're kind of exposing yourself to if you don't do it the right way. And if you're not taking these leases down the way you're supposed to be taking these leases down.
So are you saying that you clear, like you let them know what your intentions are up front, and you say, hey, I'm looking to Airbnb this. What do you think? Can I do something like that here? Because a lot of these places, they're cracking down on Airbnb.
Absolutely. For one thing, we don't say Airbnb. We don't say Airbnb because as much as I like Airbnb, Airbnb definitely has a negative tone to it. So we don't say Airbnb. The way with these apartment complexes, now it's two different approaches. If you're going to approach a landlord host, an owner occupant person, that's different from approaching an apartment complex. There's two different approaches.
Right.
Now, with these apartment complexes, we don't say Airbnb. The goal is to let them know who you are, what you do, and who you serve. Look, we're a corporate housing company. This is who we serve. We serve a lot of medical folks. We serve a lot of business travelers that are traveling in the area. But when you are working with an apartment complex, what's important is more so your business, that business. So if somebody wants to do rental arbitrage right now, number one thing I'll tell you, go ahead and get that LLC set up. Because a lot of times different apartment complexes have different requirements. They might want your entity to have been established and in good standing for 12 months, you know what I'm saying? So some might want 24 months before they even look to qualify you. So your business is what's important. And the second thing you should do, go ahead and get the DMB number established. The Dun & Bradstreet number, go ahead and get that established as well, because a lot of times they're going to want to pull your business profile based on the Dun & Bradstreet number. And once you get the Dun & Bradstreet number, go ahead and get what they call trade references or accounts receivable established in your Dun & Bradstreet account. Get that established as well, because what these apartment complexes look for is they look at your risk tolerance. You know, for us, for our personal credit, we want our credit to be as high as possible. But with them, if they pull up your Dun & Bradstreet, they want to see what your risk tolerance score is, and you want that number to be as low as possible. That means you are a low risk investor or a low risk business person. So for the apartment complex that you want to apply to, say, hey, what's your DMB number? That's what they're looking for. So if you want to do a corporate lease, a lot of times that's what they look for, and you have to be able to position your business. It's not, you don't even have to more so sell yourself too much. It's more so selling that business and having your business ready and qualified. Now, if you're working with an owner occupant person, now you're still renting under a business, still renting under an entity, but they want to qualify you as a person. If they don't care too much about a Dun & Bradstreet, you're not going to look that up. They want to know about you and what you do. And I actually have what I call my perfect tenant program. It's like a business plan almost that literally highlights who we are and what you do and who you serve. And it positions yourself and helps position yourself with a landlord host. And so you're not more so saying Airbnb. You're being upfront about your business model. Because here's the thing, a lot of people tell me like, hey, TJ, you're the Airbnb guy. And I say, yes, but here's the thing, not really. Airbnb is just a platform. It is not the business I'm in. I'm a short-term rental investor in the real estate space, right? But Airbnb is just one of the many platforms that we're on. So you're in the short-term rental business. So your goal is to convey what your business does, exactly who your business serves. And so that's what you really more so convey. We don't even mention Airbnb when we do it. So with the REIT, you want to make sure you qualify your business. And then with the owner-occupant person, you more so qualifying yourself and positioning yourself to that landlord.
So are these leases long-term leases, or are they like month to month? And do you have clauses that say that you can get out of that lease in the event that you need to break it early?
So these are long-term leases. For me, I've actually never included a clause in there. Now, I've done that with an owner-occupant landlord, not with the REIT. With the REIT, in most cases, you can't. You just have to take down that 12-month lease. I actually like to do 24-month leases in my REIT. But for me, I've done a lot of market research to confirm and look at that income potential for that particular apartment complex before I even approach them. So I know exactly what I'm getting into. And another thing that helps is that all my units are within a certain hemisphere in the city. So I know proximity-wise what that potential income for that listing is going to be. So I go in it confident. If I'm not confident at the cash flow at that listing, I'm not even going there. So when I look to take down a listing, I'm already confident at what that thing's going to do. So I'm confident in signing that year or 2-year lease. Now with the owner occupant, I have done it to where, hey, this is a nice property, great location, but if let's go ahead and do, we can do it month to month for about 4 months or 6 months, and we like each other, then we can go ahead and extend that thing for a year or 2 years or whatever the case may be. We have done that. 100%. And actually, one of the ones that we've taken down, the landlord actually requested that. He said, hey, look, let's do this. I'm okay. I'm buying into the idea. Let's do this for just a few months to make sure that we like each other. You're making your payments on time. You take care of the property. We like each other. Then we'll just go ahead and sign the transition to a long-term deal.
So my last question before I hand it back over to Rashana is, how do you determine the income potential
Right.
from as short-term rental? Because
Yeah,
I mean, I'm in downtown LA, and so my goal is like, I want to do this in downtown LA, but you're competing with the hotels there, you're competing with other people who have the same mindset. So how do you know if it makes sense from a risk perspective?
From a risk perspective, for one thing, understand that there is room for you if you're doing it right. If you're doing it right, understand that the experience that you're,
That's
there's
a
no
bar.
shortage.
That's a bar.
There's
That's
room
a
for
bar.
there's room for you if you're doing it right. Now, there's no shortage of good hosts. There's no shortage of great hosts in the space. Now, one thing that you want to make sure that you do, first of all, you want to make sure that it's okay that, you know, for that particular market, there's always short-term rental restrictions in a particular market. I always tell people to make sure they look into the restrictions in that market to make sure that you doing a short-term rentals is okay. Now, for on the other side, you understand that you are going to be providing a much different experience than a hotel. Understand that what a hotel provides, that 400 or 500 square foot box room, is totally different from the experience you're going to be providing at that apartment complex. Even if it's a studio, you're providing a kitchen, you're providing bigger spaces for people to gather. You're providing a local experience for people that stay at your place, which is very different from a hotel. So really, really understand that, especially if you're pricing your units properly, you will do well even in spite of hotels. And also, there's software. First of all, there are two ways that you can make sure too that property is going to cash flow. You can do it manually. You can pay for it. There's a software called AirDNA. AirDNA is almost like the comp of short-term rentals, right? So you can, if you go on AirDNA, I think you pay for a report is like $20 or $10 or something like that. Pay for a report for that particular. Put the address in there. Pay for it. It's actually going to grade the property from A to D. It's going to say, hey, this is the grade based on the income potential for this particular address. And you can also look and see what other people, other Airbnbs and what other short-term rentals in that area are doing, what they're charging, how occupied they are, you know, so you can get some good data on what you can do and what that potential unit can do before you move into it. And that's the paid way to do it, right? And the free way to do it, you can just go on a software like Airbnb, click in that particular city marketplace, click on the map view, and then click on these listings and see what they're doing. Click on the listing, see if they have professional pictures, see how occupied they are, see what kind of, if they offer discounts, look at what they charge every night, things like that. And then you can go into these different lists, that particular area, and just kind of run the numbers that way and make a decision that way. So those are two ways that you can really dissect the numbers. But in terms of, you know, competition and, you know, hotels, trust me, there's room for you if you're doing it right.
This is dope. I'm going to get a 2-bedroom in downtown LA, Airbnb the other bedroom, and just keep 1 bedroom for myself.
Fantastic. That'll do. That'll do good.
But he might want to check with the local laws, right? The building, because you don't want to get caught. Actually, that I know someone, a friend of mine who lives in downtown Milwaukee, right where the Bucks play, and she has a 2-bedroom. And for a while, she travels a lot anyway, but she would rent out like the 1-bedroom, and she would just lock her own room, you know, when she wasn't there, and cash flowing greatly. But the building, you know, cracked down on her about it. You know, the neighbors were complaining there's somebody different. Somebody new every other week, you know, so, but, you know, one thing that you mentioned before we wrap up, I love that you said, like, you're hosting an experience, right? And that's what you have to keep in mind too. Like you said, you're running a business, but it's also so much more than a business. Like it's so much more than nice pictures and making your property look nice. Cause I even have gone to properties that did not look like the pictures, and that was disappointing. But like you said, it's a part of an entire experience, and really put in passion into what you're doing to make sure that you know, your guests have a great experience, they have a great time, they have a great stay, and then in turn, obviously, that will grow your business just by doing good business. So I really like the fact that you pointed that out, that you are really providing an experience. There's so much more than just providing them somewhere to stay.
Absolutely. Are you still a full-time entrepreneur, or are you back kind of working and building your business at the same time?
Oh, so I'm actually a full-time entrepreneur now. You know, since when I made that decision to walk away from my engineering position, you know, I you know, the way I've been growing the business, I just haven't went back to it. And, you know, so it's been good. But again, you know, like we talked about earlier, that head start that I got was crucial. First of all,
Mm-hmm.
you know, being able to get the degree that I got and being able to work with the company that I work with is a huge blessing on its own. I wouldn't change anything about that. And being able to start something on my own while I was working was really, really what made me make that decision. And so, you know what? Okay, I technically, by definition, you know, all my expenses are handled by my assets. Okay, let me go ahead and bet on myself. So yeah, I've been full time ever since.
So, and at that time too, when you had those 5 rental properties, when you decided to walk away, did the rental income meet your current salary or exceed it?
At this point, you know, we're exceeded at this point. Yeah, we're exceeded at this point. Yeah, for sure.
No, I mean before you walked away.
Before I walked away.
Right. When you were faced with the decision of, you know, going another route or taking a package, or like at the point of, you know, having those 5 rental properties, where was that income in relation to your current salary?
Oh no, it definitely didn't exceed it. It definitely didn't exceed. And I was fortunate enough to make 6 figures out of college. You know what I mean? It cost me a lot of time because I was traveling quite a bit, but I was fortunate enough to have a 6-figure income out of college. And so, I mean, with all the assets that I had, it didn't cover it per se. It didn't cover all of it, but it did cover all my expenses, which is good, which is totally different. Yeah. But no, it didn't. But I was still able to, you know, because of what I did build, the little that I was able to build, I was still able to confidently kind of walk away.
And then you got your time. So then you can start investing your time, which is worth way more than the money.
Man, big time. Preach that.
Yeah, good stuff. Good stuff. Cool. Good interview. So, as a wrap up, we always ask the same couple of questions. And so the first question is, who is someone that you look up to and why?
Man, someone that I look up to and why. I would say, I mean, I'd be remiss not to mention my mentors. You know, my mentors that has definitely helped me out through my journey. Both my real estate mentors that has helped me even when I was wholesaling and doing fix and flips. I had mentors then. I joined, you know, different groups, and even now in the short-term rental space, my community of short-term rental. I mean, we have a community of elite investors in the short-term rental space, folks that have 100 units plus, you know, 80 units, people that have really grown this thing. And, you know, those folks have really, I look up to them all the time. And even with the brand that I'm building here in Houston, they're super supportive. And so, yeah, it's been great. So my mentors for sure, I would say somebody that I look up to. And again, my mother, I wouldn't be here without her. Honestly, I tell you, my mother's probably one of the best, probably the best person I know, period. You know what I'm saying? So just watching her growing up has been super, super inspiring. And she still keeps me going to this day. So yeah, I'll say that's probably 2 people.
Nice. And I want to ask too, so as far as your mentors, because I think that's going to be a consistent conversation that we always have, like, was it ever a point where you had to like pay for mentorship or pay for coaching? Like, what did that look like? Because even I figured you were going to say your mentors because you mentioned them like 2 to 3 times throughout the interview, but even the process of obtaining a mentor, like what did that look like? Because that's always a question from newbies and people looking to get started. Like, is mentoring supposed to be free? Is it something you pay for? You know, that whole thing.
You know, there's a saying that goes, when people pay, they pay attention. You know what I mean? So for me, I definitely paid for my mentor. I definitely had to pay for my mentor. And it actually took me a while to kind of get in his radar. At the time, he was growing his business, and, you know, he was putting out, you know, I came up on him on the internet, and I was reaching out to him, and I was pinging him. And it took a while to get a response back. He said, "Hey, actually, okay, let's talk. Let's get on the call." And I talked to him, and so he got me involved in his community and his community and the people that he's really, really helping out. And so then he told me to purchase one of his products, and I purchased the product, and really that was really what helped catapult me. So I think, you know, you got to understand that, you know, when it comes to mentorship, first of all, you want when you look to people to mentor you and to help and coach you got to be able to do at least 1 or 3 things, help you go bigger, better, faster, if not all 3 of them. And if they're not helping you execute at the minimum at least one of those things, then you really probably shouldn't wasting your time and your money. But I've purchased products, and I've you know, there's been a lot of gurus, so-called, that I've wasted money on, to be quite honest with you. But it's not even, and and not even because understand, no matter what you do with the mentor, you have to take action. Like your execution is the biggest part of it at the end of the day. So, but I have been put in a great position because of some of the people that I decided to surround myself with. And so I think that's very, very important to have that, because what it does is it kind of cuts through. It cuts through. Like if it can't help you go faster, it cuts through that mistake, the mistakes that they made, a lot of mistakes that they made, you can kind of maneuver and finesse yourself around that. And that's very, very important. So I think it's important to have somebody to model after, because a lot of times you don't necessarily have to reinvent the wheel. You just have to make sure that you are aligning yourself with the right person who's already on that path that you want. And so I think that's very, very important. Now I think that you probably going to have a mentor either way, either a person that you pay for, or you're going to pay for it with the streets on the street. So sometimes it just depends on which route you want to go. But I think mentors are pretty valuable.
For sure. What's your favorite real estate or business book?
Oh man, great question. So, I recently it's actually not even more so a real estate book, but one of the things that I struggle with is like time management. I need to do better with that. I think a lot of people need help with time management, but this book has been one of my favorites. It's called No BS Time Management for Entrepreneurs. I've read it 3 times now. And it's one of those books that you definitely probably want to read at least probably once a year to kind of refresh your mind and keep your mind focused and make sure that you're managing your time properly. And so it's definitely a great read. No BS Time Management for Entrepreneurs. It's a good one. So I think that's kind of just because I know how important that is for me. That's kind of been my favorite book lately.
What would you say is your best advice for somebody looking to get started in the short-term rental space?
I would say make sure that you, man, so many for newbie. Few things. Make sure to do your market research for one. Make sure that the market agrees with the short-term rental space, and not even just that market, but that particular area in that neighborhood. Make sure there are no deed restrictions, HOA that'll stop you from executing your short-term rental confidently. Get your LLC going. If you want to do rental arbitrage, get that entity going, get that DMV going, and it's okay, because a lot of times one of the biggest issues, one of my students, she was really discouraged because she was talking to landlords, and the way she was talking to them was, she would stutter, she would kind of freeze up, she was nervous and stuff. And so I told her, I said, look, that's okay. Consistency is the name of the game here. You will get better and better with time. So don't be discouraged if it doesn't work out the first few times. I remember the first time I went to talk to this apartment complex, and I said, hey, yeah, my name's TJ. I want to do, we list our listing on different sites, and and she's like, wait, you're on Airbnb? Oh, no. This is a waste of my time. And she literally got up and walked out of that day. She probably had a frustrating day already. And I just sat there in the office like, what just happened? And she left me. She left me in that office and just left in anger. So don't be discouraged when you're getting going, when you're talking to people. It's repetition is the name of the game. It gets better and better with time. So if you're new, don't feel like, this business isn't for you. If you're not able to execute these lease agreements and talk to folks comfortably, just give it more time, better repetition. Trust me, you'll become a beast at it.
Nice.
What sets apart successful investors from those who give up, fail, or never get started?
Man, that's a great question. I think 2 things. I think, first of all, failure is a lot of times a part of the game. The difference between the folks who actually make it or who don't is, are you standing on top of your failures, or you decide to lay underneath them and let them consume you? So understand that being able to stand on top of it is very, very important, and being able to push through and realizing what went wrong and being able to pivot and not make those same mistakes and learn from it and get better from it is very, very important. I know that sounds cliche, but man, it's so, so crucial. And especially, we touched on it earlier, being able to adjust, because as an entrepreneur, you're a problem solver. So you got to be able to solve problems within your own business as well. So as things happen that might seem like a setback, you got to be able to adjust and pivot and to adjust for that certain situation. I think those 2 things are very important in what determines whether people succeed or whether they fail.
Absolutely. Love it. Well, thank you so much for coming on. This was such a good interview. I was taking notes. I definitely wrote down the name of the book. and so many gems. I love that you broke down like the rental arbitrage and the risk associated with that and how to do it properly to make sure you are, protected and things like that. Man, just definitely an interview that's full of gems. You got anything else, Charles? Oh, where can people find you and connect with you and support what you have going on?
Yes, definitely check me out. Super active on social media, especially on Instagram, at TJ Tajani, just my name, nothing even complicated. It's at TJ TIJANI. Definitely tap on me there.
So, man, it's crazy because the last few episodes have been Houston, but it sounds like Houston is kind of like Atlanta in a way. There's just like so much African American success there, which is dope to see.
Yeah.
So
we gotta get more of that.
Episode 152, Chicago is kind of like that too. Philly's like that. It's good things are happening these days.
Sure.
Rashana Scott, Charles Oglesby, also known as Todd Millionaire, episode 152, signing off.
Thank y'all so much. Have a
blessed one. You too, man.
All right. Thank you.